In the beginning. In the beginning. Bereshit means in the beginning. It is the first word of the Hebrew text as well as the first word of the first Torah portion. The traditional Greek name for the first book of the Torah is Genesis, meaning origin. This is the account of the oldest history of all things. In this Parsha we find origin of the 6 days of creation, origin of Sabbath, the 7th day, history of the creation of heaven and earth. Adonai formed a person from the dust, Eden, naming the creatures, companion. Origin of the sin and its consequences, the promise of Messiah, banished from Eden, Cain and Abel and Lameck, wickedness of humankind. Why study origins? Studying origins help us to understand who we are, our journey in this world, and the purpose of our lives. In the beginning was the Word. The creation account is not revealed to us from the first-person perspective of some man's understanding of God, but from an omniscient third-person perspective. A divine voice is revealing how God created the entire cosmos by means of His spoken word. In the first creation account, we read that the earth was unformed and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the water. First words God spoke was, "Let there be light," and there was light. God created cosmos, universe by His spoken word. He called them into being. What God created witnessed to His power and glory. We learn that in Genesis 1, the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the water. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things came in to be through Him, and without Him nothing made had being. In Him was life, and life was the light of mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not suppressed it. John chapter 1 verse 1 to 5. Also in the book of Colossians it states that because in connection with Him were created all things, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, lordships, rulers, or authorities. They have all been created through Him and for Him. He existed before all things, and He holds everything together. Colossians chapter 1 verses 16 and 17. In the beginning, Lord, you laid the foundations of the earth. Heaven is the work of your hands. Hebrew 1 verse 10. By trusting, by faith, we understand that the universe was created through a spoken word of God, so that what is seen did not come into being out of existing phenomena. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 3. He made the earth by His power, established the world by His wisdom, and spread out the sky by His understanding. Jeremiah chapter 51:15. By the word of Adonai the heavens were made, and their whole host by a breath from His mouth. He collects the sea waters together in a heap. He puts the depths in storehouses. Let all the earth fear Adonai. Let all living in the world stand in awe of Him. For He spoke, and there it was. He commanded, and there it stood. Psalms chapter 33, verse 6 to 9. Many cultures believe in various gods, each god responsible for a particular force of nature, such as sun god, moon god, or god responsible for earth. Polytheism suggests that many gods work together to keep the universe going. Story of 6 days creation states that God created everything. This is monotheism. One creator God. But we are not to worship the creation and serve it. Deuteronomy 4 verses 19. 6 days of creation, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 to 31. Each day began by God speaking and calling into being what He wanted to create. The phrase, "that is how it was," appear only in days 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th. God's first blessing fell on the creatures that were created on the 5th day, and second blessing on the 6th day on mankind. Only on the 6th day, the phrase, "there was evening and there was morning," not repeated. Shabbat, the 7th day, Genesis chapter 2 verse 1 to 3. On the 7th day, God finished with His work which He had made, so He rested on the 7th day from all His work which He had made. He rested, Shabbat, because the creation work was complete. He blessed the 7th day, separated it as holy, because on that day God rested from all His work which He had created, so that it itself could produce. The noun form of Shabbat is Shabbat. Translated to English as Sabbath, Shabbat begins at sunset on Friday night and ends after sunset on Saturday. God commanded Jewish people to celebrate Shabbat. Yeshua HaMashiach himself, the apostles, and early Christians celebrated Shabbat. According to Isaiah 56, verse 6, Shabbat can be celebrated by Gentile believers too. To keep Sabbath day holy is one of the 10 commandments given by God. Shabbat is a special gift and a sign to the Jewish people and to all mankind. Contradict or complement. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 to chapter 2 verse 3 gives an overview of the cosmic events of the creation week in chronological order and an account of events taking place in each day. Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 to verse 25 does not give a separate account of creation, rather focuses on the creation of Adam and Eve, events of day 6 and Eden, tree of life, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the river, the gold, commandment, and marriage. Creation of man. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 to 3. Word used is Elohim, the creator of universe. Imply the strength, power, and justice. Yahweh, Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 to 25. In this narration, word Yahweh is used. Expresses God's closeness to man. Creation of man. Adonai formed a person from the dust. Eden, naming the creatures, companion. Then Adonai God formed a person. In Hebrew, Adam, from the dust of the ground. in Hebrew Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, so that he became a living being. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. Creation of man is the highest of all God's creations. It is a deliberate act of God. Psalmist states in Psalm 139, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and I know this very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Psalms 139, verses 14 and 15. Above all, as the most excellent and exceeding great work of his intelligence, with his sacred and faultless hands, he formed man in the impress of his own image. 1 Clement chapter 33 verse 4. We are made from the dust of the earth, part of the rest of his creation, yet also hold his breath within us, which connect us to him and to heaven. So we struggle between these two points of origin. We are pre-programmed to seek our Creator and bring his will on the earth. Eden, naming the creatures and companion. Adonai God planted a garden towards the east in Eden, and there he put the person whom he had formed. Genesis chapter 2 verse 8. Eden means delight. God placed man in a paradise. He didn't lack anything. No struggle, no hindrances. In the garden was every tree pleasing in appearance and good for food. Among them was the tree of life and tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So from the ground Adonai God formed every wild animal and every bird that flies in the air. And he brought them to the person to see what he would call them. Whatever the person would call each living creature, that was to be its name. Genesis chapter 2 verse 19. Adonai God said, it isn't good that the person should be alone. I will make for him a companion suitable for helping him. Genesis chapter 2 verse 18. Adonai God had taken from the person, he made a woman person and he brought her to the man person. Genesis chapter 2 verse 22. Origin of sin and its consequences. Adonai God gave the person this order: you may freely eat from every tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You are not to eat from it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Genesis chapter 2 verses 16 to 17. This was a commandment by God. As we know, Eve could not resist the temptation to be like God. Temptation by the serpent. And she ate a fruit from the tree and gave it to Adam too. They disobeyed the commandment of God, the first sin or the origin of sin. Among many other serious consequences of the first sin is that the eyes of Adam and Eve opened. They knew they were naked. What was beautiful became shame. They entered kingdom of darkness and out of the authority of God. Further consequences of sin. Adam and Eve hid from the presence of God. Serpent cursed more than all livestock and wild animals. Animosity between the woman, her seed, and serpent and its seed. Increased pain in childbirth. Desire towards the husband, but he will rule over you. Ground is cursed. Work hard. eat field plants, dust will return to dust. Banished from Eden, away from the tree of life. The promise of Messiah. I will put animosity between you and the woman, and between your descendant and her descendant. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. Genesis chapter 3 verse 15. Serpent is the enemy of mankind and of God. He is also called the accuser of brethren. Seed of the woman is the promised Messiah, only one who can reverse the curse and return the authority of God's creation back to him. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Micah chapter 5 verse 2. Its fulfillment, Matthew chapter 2 verse 1 and Luke chapter 2 verse 4 to 7. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. Fulfillment, Matthew 1:18. He has rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son. It is through his Son that we have redemption, that is, our sins have been forgiven. Colossians chapter 1 verses 13 and 14. Cain and Abel and Lameck. Adam and Eve's first children are Cain and Abel. They were exiled from Eden. They brought separate offerings to God. Cain's heart was not right towards God, but Abel's heart was right with God. God accepted Abel's sacrifice, but out of jealousy, Cain murdered his brother Abel, the first murder. Lameck was a descendant of Cain. He was wounded and injured by a young man, and he killed him and told his wives, if Cain will be avenged sevenfold, then Lameck 77fold. Genesis chapter 4 verse 24. Lameck's attitude, his law of vengeance, set a process of violence in motion. That in Genesis chapter 6 verse 5 we read, Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on earth. Commandment of Yeshua HaMashiach. One day Peter asked Yeshua HaMashiach, Rabbi, how often can my brother sin against me and I have to forgive him? As many as 7 times? Matthew chapter 18 verse 21 and 22. Yeshua HaMashiach's commandment is to love. He commanded, love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Also, to love your neighbor as yourself. Yeshua HaMashiach answered Peter by saying, no, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Matthew 18 verse 21 and 22. He turned around the principle that Lameck used for vengeance, the same equation, and showed people that by obedience to his commandment to love one another, one can forgive the wrongdoer as many times as you can. To Adam was born Shet, and to Shet was born Enosh. Genesis chapter 4 verse 26 states that is when the people began to call on the name of Adonai. Another important event we see in the genealogy of Adam is mentioned in Genesis chapter 5 verse 21 to 24. Enoch walked with God, and then he wasn't there because God took him. Maranatha.